I want to start with a question to you today, and that is, what's the worst possible thing on earth? I added that, by the way. What's the worst possible thing on earth that could happen to you? What's that? Get stuck in a battle zone. Okay. What's that? Critical health issues. Okay. Die in the battle zone. Well, at least it's over. At least it's over. That's all. You have to look on the bright side of things, don't you? Volcano. Okay. Volcanoes are interesting. I went to the one outside of Managua, Nicaragua, and there's a story that's told, whether it's true or not, that when the Sandinistas wanted to interrogate a prisoner, they would dangle him over the volcano until they got the information they needed. And once they got the information, they'd cut him loose and let him fall in. So I don't know. Thurman? Okay, serious illness or death of a child. That is a big deal. That is my dad, when he was alive, he wrote a story of his life on the prompting of my brother. And one place, we had lost our 2-year-old nephew or niece, and he wrote about that. He said, "I lost my wife, but the thing that hurt the worst was losing my grandchild," which is exactly true. People who say things like this is kind of what they come up with. There are a lot of people that have a terrible fear of drowning. Nobody wants to drown. I mean, you get underwater and you just panic, and you don't want to do that. The other is fire. I had a cousin that died in a fire, house fire, and there's nothing worse than that for a family, and you just imagine the agony of something like that. Or losing your mental faculties. Now, most people don't think about that, but the thing I hear about from people who are older, especially, and I appreciate this more and more, and that is, I don't mind dying, but I don't want to live without knowing who I am anymore. That's a hard thing to do. And so these are things that kind of steal things from you, if you will. This is kind of how we look at life through a Disney movie. And they lived happily ever after. You do this, 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 and this, and everything's going great. You go upward, 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 and things are wonderful. The only problem, that's only a fairy tale. It's not life. It doesn't happen that way, as we're going to find out today as well. Last week, we covered Job chapter 1, and in Job 1, there is this catalog of losses that he goes through. He loses his fortune. All of his cattle, all of his sheep are all wiped away. And then he loses his family. His 10 kids are all killed on the same day. And on top of that, he's beginning to lose his peace of mind. How do you live in a world in which you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow? But in chapter 2, we hear 3 voices. The first voice is the voice of the accuser. We've heard that last week with the voice of Satan. When Satan comes in the first chapter, the term Satan, if you remember, means accuser. And so the accuser is there to create doubt and problems. It says, I like this part where it says, and there was a day. You remember last week we had 3 different instances, and that's what happened. There was a day. You don't know when it is. It could be any day. It could be today, by the way, for you and me. There was a day. Random day, average day, normal day. And the sons of God were present themselves before the Lord, and Satan was among them again. And God says, have you considered my servant Job? There's no one on earth like him, blameless and upright man who fears God and turns away from evil. He still holds fast his integrity, although you incited me to destroy him without reason. Now, I want you to, first of all, the word destroy, let's look at that for just a moment. That's a word that means to engulf someone, submerge them in something. This is the word that is used in the book of Job, or in the book of Jonah, rather. When Jonah finds himself in the belly of the great fish, that's the word that's used. He was swallowed by the fish. And so everything about Job's life, he's surrounded by difficulty. He has no way to get out, no way to deal with it anymore. And the key word, I think, here is the concept of without reason. The book of Job is looking for a reason for why bad things happen. God says there was no reason for this. There was no purpose for this. There was no cause for this. And yet at the same time, we always are looking for reasons. We believe in cause and effect, don't we? You smoke for 40 years and you get lung cancer. The smoking caused the lung cancer. It says so right on the pack of the cigarettes, as I've been told. You drink like a fish and you develop cirrhosis of the liver and it kills you. The drinking created the problem. And we look at life through that lens, cause and effect. If something happens, there had to be a cause for it. In the book of Job, everybody's looking for the cause of it. Job, what did you do that was so bad that caused you to get to this situation? And it's going to be a struggle, as we're going to see over 8 more weeks. But Satan answers the Lord. Now, interesting that God still holds Job in high esteem. He's passed the first test. And Satan comes back and he says, skin for skin. All that a man has, he'll give for his life. But stretch out your hand and touch his bone and his flesh, and he'll curse you to his face. He says there is a point that everybody does something that is what they never thought they could do. There's this, he's a cynic. I want you to think about this. Satan is a cynic. He believes the worst in people. He believes in the worst in the world. We would like to think that you can see everything, both sides, good and bad. He only sees the fact that if he can do something to you, he can make you do something. He can manipulate you. Every manipulator is a cynic. Every last one of them is a cynic. Because they believe that you can be manipulated. And so he says, skin for skin. Last week we introduced this lesson, this concept. Why do you serve God? See, that's the first question that Satan has asked. Why does Job serve God? It's because you put this hedge around him and you protected him, you gave him great things, and that's what he has. Take away the hedge and he'll curse you. Well, Job doesn't. So the question is still there. Why do you serve God? Is it because of his blessings? Well, obviously, now Job has not surrendered due to the loss of all the other things he's had. But then he asks this question. Would you serve God without everything else? He is asking a particular question that you and I probably don't think about much. Where is your breaking point in life? At what point does your faith get so thin that it snaps? Now, we sit here in this chapel today and we say, it'll never happen. Satan is asking the question of each and every person, what is your breaking point? All that a man has, he will give for his life. Now, this is a toothpick, The interesting thing about toothpick, there are several things like, because I thought about this late, I couldn't find much more than this. But a toothpick does have some give to it until you put enough and it snaps. Now, if that were the same size of a little steel rod, it might bend but not break. So, where's the breaking point? At what point are you willing to surrender everything that you believe and everything that you have been just to save your own life? Jesus asked this question. Well, what can a man give in return for his soul? Same question, by the way. At what point would you give up the most important things for the most immediate things? You remember the story about Esau. Esau is willing to trade an entire future for a bowl of soup when he's hungry. You want to tell me where his tipping point is? Where his breaking point? It's pretty low. What would you do if the fruit was so low that you would do whatever for it and it would be easy? I like this statement from Harold Robbins. You may not know Harold Robbins. I don't read Harold Robbins because he writes smut, but I like some of his quotations. This is from The Carpetbagger. Carpetbagger was a story written back in the 50s, and it was about men who manipulated other people to get what they wanted. That's the broad, general sense of the story. Here's what Robbins said in The Carpetbaggers. For every man has a price. For some, it's money. For some, it's women. For others, it's glory. But for the honest man, you don't have to buy. He winds up costing you nothing. Why? He can't be bribed. Some people have a much higher breaking point. Satan is trying to find the price tag for Job. He's trying to find the price tag for you and me. At what point can we sell off what we believe in deeply to gain something that's not worth as much? My granddaughter came over one day, and I hate to say it, but I took the wrong way home. Not because I didn't know the way, but because I should have turned before that, because as we turned in, there was a garage sale taking place in our neighborhood. She just got all in a tither. Can we go? Can we go? Can we go? I said, if God takes you, you can do whatever you want to do. Don't drag me into this. And so they go over to this garage sale. Now, this guy around the corner from us, he has a garage sale about 4 times a year. He collects junks to sell junk. I don't know how many people have figured out what garage sales are. It is to collect junk to sell junk. The people who will buy junk to sell junk. The people who will buy junk to sell junk. It's the circle of life. She goes over there with a couple bucks and she buys all this stuff. It's not worth it. Oh, Satan has a garage sale every day. He says, would you like to buy my stuff? He's asking Job, what are you prepared to buy? And God says, behold, he is in your hand, only spare his life. Remember in chapter 1, God put a restriction on what Satan could do. And that restriction was you can do everything but touch his life. And now he says you can touch his body but not take his life. Let me ask you, why do you think God lets that happen? Okay, he knew him. Yeah. Okay, he believed more in. Yeah. And the truth, and we saw this last week, Job doesn't know himself as well as God knows himself. We don't know ourselves as well as God does. God already knows what's going to happen to us. As we pointed out in 1 Corinthians 10, He doesn't let you be tempted beyond what you'll bear. Why? Because He knows what you can stand. He knows your tensile strength, is the engineering term. He may be. Yeah. Stop bringing all this stuff to me and quit doing this. He may be. I'm not sure who. Satan hadn't learned it yet. Let's put it that way. He's a slow learner. Does Job know any of this is happening? Not a bit. He doesn't know how God feels. He doesn't know what's taking place in heaven. He doesn't know anything but the effect it has on his life. And that's the problem for us. We only feel the effect. We don't have a reason. We think if we had the reason, it would help us. But it doesn't. So, Job is going to be struggling through all of this for that reason. So it says that Satan left the presence of the Lord, and he had loathsome sores from the sole of his feet to the crown of his head. We call them boils. The word is used in Exodus chapter 9 and verse 9 to describe the boils that were part of the plagues of Egypt. If God is going to let boils be an affliction that can help free His people from Egypt, they must be painful. I don't know about you. I had a boil every once in a while. They're not pleasant, but you usually have one. Just think about Job. Job has boils from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. They're painful. You can't stand up. You can't sit down. You can't lay down. You can't turn over. You'll never find the spot where it's going to be just enough relief where you can relax. Constant strain. And it said, this, by the way, if you look through the book of Job, as we read through it, you'll come to these references. We won't touch on all of them, but this is where I'm going to pull them together. Job describes his condition throughout the book physically. If you look, what this was doing to him, it was an amazing thing. It created itching that we see here. There was insomnia because you can't sleep. When he could sleep, there was nightmares. There's tremendous weight loss. There's the cause of bad breath, which is a disease, can create that issue. Bowel problems, blotched skin, and an unrecognizable appearance. How'd you like to have that list of categories? That's worse than all the side effects on every drug they advertise on TV. Job's living with this. And he goes and he has to scrape himself with broken pots, sharp things, just to get some. Can you imagine just scratch and scratch and scratch all the time? Because the more you scratch, the more you break it open. The more you break it open, the more it bleeds. The more it bleeds, the more it itches. Constant. And it says that he sat in the ashes. The ashes is a place where they throw their garbage. Job is now living in the garbage dump. He's there for a lot of reasons. Number one, I think he's so disfigured and so hideous that he's been banished in a sense. He doesn't want to show himself. And in a sense, this is a very much of a mirror of his life right now. His life feels like it's in the garbage heap. He wasn't fit to live around people. I like this picture. This is a real picture, by the way. This is an AI generated. This is a man who's an actor. The only roles he ever plays is they need a hideous character, they hire him. He's made quite a good living playing hideous people. This is his physical appearance. Can you imagine if Job was even a tenth of this? And he's probably a lot worse. How bad he must have been. What does it feel like to be human garbage? You ever think about that? You didn't have any value at all to anybody. What's that? completely worthless. You have no friends. You have no one to care about you at all. It's a terrible situation. Now let me ask you this, because you and I have this. What does physical pain do to you? When you hurt, what happens? Oh, okay, okay. People don't. People are not nice when they feel bad. They snap at you, and that's it's hard to do that sometimes to be around people. They have like that. But pain changes people, doesn't it? It depresses you. Yeah, I mean, you're constantly your nervous system's constantly being pinged to where you never do have enough. You're just fighting the physical pain all the time. You don't know what else to do about it, and so he's living with this. That's what Satan has given him. And now you hear the voice of his wife. She says to him, "Do you still hold fast to your integrity?" Notice something. That's what God said he was doing. Do you remember my servant? Have you considered my servant Job? He still holds fast. She's saying, she's now bringing up, why are you doing this? Curse God and die. Now, by the way, she is the voice on earth of Satan in heaven. That's what Satan is saying. If you do this, he'll curse you. So Job, go ahead and do it. What his wife said. Do you think she's being helpful? Okay. It's probably a family condition. It's interesting. We never think about her, but why do you think she says all this? She lost everything too. It's interesting. We don't think that way. We concentrate on Job. She has her own pains and losses. She's lost her family. She's lost her security. Now she's losing her husband. How much more can I take? She has her own pains and losses. Now, this is an interesting thing that happens. In pain, we always seek a way out of it. I knew a young lady who tried to commit suicide. Thank goodness it was not successful and it didn't harm her. I don't know how we got off on the conversation. I never asked the question, why did you do it? Bad way to do things, by the way. But she finally said to me, she said, all I wanted to do was to stop the pain. All I want to do is stop the pain. When people are hurting, all they want to do is stop the pain. Tell me enough pills to take, the shots to get, the therapies to take. I just want to get rid of the pain. So you say, we just want relief. We don't want wisdom. We don't want people come say, can I tell you what this can... by the way, you don't really want to go to somebody who's in pain and say, just think about what the good God is doing to you for you right now. You'll get slapped, man. You'll be picking up your nose on the other side of the county when that happens, because people don't want to hear that. I like what the Dr. Anderson says. He says, it's easier to lower your view of God than to raise your faith to such a height. It's easier to say, I don't want my faith to be that strong. I just want some relief. There are two things that Job will not give up. Number one, he will not give up his faith in God. Even though his wife says so, he won't. And he will not give up his integrity that says there's something that I have not done anything wrong to deserve this. Throughout the book of Job, Job will maintain the fact that I haven't done anything to deserve this, even though he's going to be told that over and over and over again. He replies to his wife and says, you speak as a foolish one who doesn't know anything. Now, I would suggest if you're a male, don't do that. There are two passages of Scripture to avoid in marriage. One is here. You're foolish. Doesn't work. The other is what Samson said. You have plowed with my heifer. Neither one of those are appropriate. So, people say we need to follow the scripture. Don't follow the scripture all the time, especially here. You speak as a foolish woman. Shall we receive good from God and not receive evil? If we believe in a blessing of God and God withdraws that, do we then quit believing in God? We only believe in God because of the good that He does to us? In all this, Job did not sin with his lips. I want to ask you about something. What do you think it means? It says he didn't sin with his lips. Sin with his heart, okay? Possibly. He doesn't say the words. He's struggling, yeah. As you're going to see, Job is demanding at times, that's the best word I got, demanding an answer from God that will satisfy him. Don't we all? Don't we all? We want God to satisfy us. That's right. And the interesting thing, one thing we're going to see over and over again, God doesn't mind being questioned. We kind of believe that we should never question God. Job does it all the way through this book, and God's fine with it. God's big enough to handle your questions and your doubts and your fears. So don't worry about God's feelings. And then you finally get the voice of the mourners. We're going to meet 4 men in this book, 3 of which we meet here. A last one named Elihu will come later in the book. He's got 3 friends. These are probably men whose names are given in order of their age, the oldest first. You have Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. It says, when they heard of all of this, they each came from his own place. They made a journey, by the way. And they made an appointment together to show him sympathy and to comfort him. They are intentional. I want to point that out. Their care is intentional. We made decisions to do this. And here's the reason we wanted to do it. But when they come, he's unrecognizable. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into hospital rooms where a person is basically terminally ill, and they look absolutely nothing like their former self. This past weekend, we went down to Galveston County for a funeral of a dear friend. It was being held at a funeral home. It was owned by a man that I had known while I was there, and he was a good friend, as well as his son. We began to wondering what had happened to him. And so Vicki, in her own inimitable way, gets on Google and finds out. I raise questions, she provides answers. Makes for good marriages, by the way. At least Google does. And what we found out was he died 3 years ago of cancer. And they had his obituary picture. In life, he had been this big. Now he was real thin. I would have never recognized him on the street. Job's friends can't recognize him. He's gotten this pitiful. And they all raised their voices and wept. In other words, they experienced the same feelings that Job felt. If you're going to be helpful in life, you need to learn to experience the same emotions that the people you're trying to help are feeling. I can tell you how that's happening. If you'll listen just long enough, you'll get this feeling in the pit of your stomach right here, and you begin to feel very uncomfortable. You know what you want to do when that moment comes? You want to run. This is where you need to stay. Because what you're doing, you're feeling with them. In the New Testament, the word compassion means to feel with your inward parts. That's what this is. They tore the robes and sprinkled. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 We never get said the other side of that story. You know, that's what novelists do is they go, huh, what if we reversed all of this? Well, we don't have that. So interesting, they tear their robes and they sprinkle dust on their head. They play like they're burying themselves. Death has come. And it says they sat on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke, not a word to him. Can you imagine sitting 7 days and not saying anything? You realize how hard it is when you get in with people who are hurting you, want to kind of lighten the mood. Hey, did you hear about, how about them Cowboys? I mean, we want to, silence. When you help in sorrow, several things you need to do. Number one, you go even if you don't know what to say. You don't know what to say. I've been doing this for 50 plus years. I don't know what to say. A lot of times the best thing to say is nothing. And go for the right reasons. You want to help the person, not because you have a guilt complex, not because you want to look important. Go because of them. Go and just be present. When people are hurting, they just need somebody around them. Go and be prepared for the worst. Don't be shocked. Just not say anything. Don't give any answer. Don't give any glib answers. Don't say things, well, the Lord wanted him with him now. That may be true, it may not be true, but it's not helpful at the moment. It's just being there. That's right. You just don't want to be alone. And you need somebody there. That's an interesting thing. This chapter is going to end with silence, by the way. There is silence from the friends. There's silence from Job. More importantly, there's silence from God. You realize in the book of Job, God does not speak again until you get to the 38th chapter. The big question for Job himself is, where is God when I need him? Don't we all feel that way? So what do you do when you sit in the ashes? What lessons do you learn? Number one, there always comes, troubles are going to come, trials are going to come, even though we don't want them. That's the human condition. Trouble will visit you. You don't have to go find it. It'll find you. Don't worry about it. But sometimes the people who love us the most will give us the worst answers. They won't give us good advice. But you have to remember to step back and say, they're dealing with their own problems, their own emotions as well. There are a lot of people, they just need, they're trying to figure out what to do about themselves as much as anything else. The price of relief, though, can be too high. You can give up too much. I would suggest you figure out what you're willing to pay before you have to pay it. Because the day will come, we'll ask. And then in life, we're going to experience both blessing and adversity. You better be prepared for both of them. Because both come. Next week, go ahead. We're going to do chapter 3. Chapter 3 is a tough chapter. Because in chapter 3, the anguish of the human spirit is expressed in its rawness. So buckle up and be prepared. Thank you very much.